comments at their direction. Next slide. So, we'll just a brief welcome and a brief overview of Connect All. We'll provide some information about the Municipal Infrastructure Program and the request for applications, which is now open. How to apply using our consolidated funding application portal, and some of the next steps. We won't be answering questions in this forum, but please use either the chat or the Q&A section to share your questions, and we'll be answering some of the initial questions we received through the MIP email address when we send out this slide deck and recording. We'll follow up with additional questions with additional answers as we review the questions that come in. Next slide. So as I said, we are speaking to the Municipal Infrastructure Program. The presentation is being recorded. We will share the recording with the slide deck after the session, Q&A, and we'll share links in the chat as we go through, so you can open them and come back to your browser after the session. And obviously all of this will be posted at our website, broadband.ny.gov. Next slide. And also, as I said, Connect All is responsible for investments of over $1 billion of public funding. And this is Governor Hochul's plan to bring affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service to all New Yorkers to make the internet work for New York. Our 5 signature programs include the Municipal Infrastructure Program, our Affordable Housing Connectivity Program, our Digital Equity Plan and Grant Program, the Connect All Deployment Program to address unserved and underserved locations specifically, and our Connectivity Innovation Program. Next slide. So speaking to this program today, next slide. So the objectives of our program is to think about how we make broadband more like a basic utility by investing in publicly owned or controlled networks, connecting tens of thousands of locations with future-proof open access last mile broadband infrastructure that can be used by multiple internet service providers, and to prioritize projects that address unserved and underserved locations, and our overall mandate from the governor and the legislature to develop a robust, equitable broadband marketplace. And this program is supported by over $228 million from the Treasury Department's Capital Projects Fund, made possible through the American Rescue Plan Act. Next slide. We're building on a set of pilot projects and really a long history of public infrastructure in New York, with partners like the Development Authority of the North Country and Southern Tier Network, who also worked with us in the New York Power Authority, along with Sherburne Electric, a local municipal electric utility, the town of Nichols, and a number of private partners to implement different models of publicly owned shared infrastructure in these 4 towns across Shenango County, Tioga County, Lewis, and St. Lawrence counties. And one of the key things that we've learned from this, in addition to the value of this approach, is that there are different solutions and different approaches, and we've tried to make the program incorporate the lessons from all of these different models that are being implemented in the North Country and the Southern Tier. And again, we want to thank our partners for successfully completing these pilots in December, with new infrastructure reaching over 3,000 homes and businesses in these 4 communities, and for the ability to tie into the New York Power Authority's excess fiber capacity as authorized by the legislature. Next slide. So for the Municipal Infrastructure Program, there are eligible public applicants and eligible private partner applicants. Applicants may apply in teams with other eligible applicants to fulfill the deployment, operation, maintenance, and end user ISP roles and requirements. Under eligible public applicants are public entities, as well as municipal utilities and utility cooperatives. with the focus on public ownership of the planned infrastructure, either in whole or in partnership. And we specifically list out some of the public entities, the types of public entities that are included. And if you have any questions about that, again, you can ask and we'll review any questions about a particular entity that may be eligible. Private partner applicants are internet service providers, managed service providers, infrastructure builders or owners that are looking to build open access infrastructure in partnership with a public applicant. Next slide. Proposals must address the following requirements. So no duplication of federal state funding, which doesn't necessarily mean there can't be locations, but it can't be duplication of the purpose or the impact. Projects must reach substantial completion before December 31st, 2026. And that certainly, I think, will be a key focus as we're reviewing projects. Meeting the reporting, the transparency, and the compliance requirements from ESD and Treasury, delivering a high-speed, reliable internet service, meeting the minimum performance requirements, which are laid out in the RFA, but at least 100 megabits per second symmetrical, prioritizing gigabit service, and certainly cost is a consideration and a requirement in the review process. For eligible public applicants, as I said, a form of public ownership, so an approach that meets Connect All standards. For private partner applicants, the private infrastructure should look to connect into other publicly controlled infrastructure, which could be a county network or some of the other state fiber assets or regional entities, and be operating as an open access network as under terms approved by Connect All. If you have any questions about the approach or the model that you might take and whether it fits in these categories or is eligible for consideration, again, please send that in as a question, and we'll do our best to explain the applicability of these requirements and the way things are being prioritized, reviewed, or the potential for any possibility under which any terms may be considered for waiver requests. And we are generally, as one of those frameworks, generally looking to limit proposals to a maximum of $30 million to not only to ensure that these are projects of a scale that can be completed by December 31st, 2026, but also so that we have the opportunity to implement multiple projects in multiple regions of the state. Next slide. So this lays out the timeline of the program as we expect it to roll out. And the key dates here, well, first of all, is the phase 1 applications, which are due March 8th, and then the 2 subsequent phases. And the key to these 3 different phases is that phases 1 and 2 are for the eligible public applicants, and phase 3 is for eligible private partner applicants. In this program, consistent with our mandate and the overall design, is prioritizing those public applicants by taking these steps, working different phases. But we are open to proposals from private applicants, but we want to make sure that that we have funding available before you go through the trouble of developing the proposal. So you should be looking ahead to that. But we will open the phase 3 application based on funding available. So this is the current timeline, and we reserve the right to modify this as we see the phases moving forward, or as we see the funding being allocated. And then again, all projects proceeding to substantial completion by the end of 2026. Next slide. So I'll go through a bit what you will find in the request for applications if you haven't had a chance to download it already. Next slide. And if we can put in a link to it, which you'll see up on the site here in the chat. And what we try and do for our applications, make sure you can download a PDF of it, go through all the questions in that form to begin to think about and plan out your application. before we go to the next phase of submitting it through the online platform, which I'll get to in a minute. So obviously, you can look at the table of contents, and these are the key things to consider. Next slide. And all of these appendices and everything are in the PDF available. And the application content and scope of services gives you a great overview, and all the information that you will be needing to include. And again, all of these questions and requirements match this outline when you actually go to submit through the Consolidated Funding Application portal. Next slide. So some key considerations of the application. One is the application review. We will review everything for eligibility, completeness, and then proceed to the scoring criteria. The scoring weight is shown here, as well as in the RFA. Based on the number of applications we received and the availability of funds, we'll move the highest scoring proposals to conditional approval. And then we will confer with the conditional awardees to review opportunities to improve the proposal, reduce risk, make sure that it can be completed on time, and so forth. And just to be clear, a conditional award does not guarantee a grant award. But certainly one thing to consider with this, and I should have said this on the timeline, submitting in phase one is helpful for your review for our process, and specifically projects that intend to address unserved and underserved locations. We strongly encourage you to submit in the phase one, because that will allow us to review those proposals. That will give us the best chance to review those proposals and proceed through this process consistent with the timeline for our Connect All deployment program. Next slide. And obviously these sections and the questions in them, so in terms of what's specifically being asked, are in the application, and you should go through those closely. The review timeline and selection criteria, again, phase one and phase two are just for eligible public applicants. March 8th, with the idea of proceeding through that process before we have the phase two application, although some projects may stay in that phase, or some applications may stay in that phase into the phase two process. And then we'll confirm that we're proceeding with the phase three application based on the availability of funds. Next slide. So now I'll go into a little bit about the consolidated funding application platform. Next slide. So how to apply. The applications have to be submitted through our consolidated funding application platform. And this is something that you should do now if you haven't done it already, which is go ahead and create an account at that platform. Register, sign in, make sure you can log in, and get any help you might need to create that account. Once you create the account, you'll be able to use that token to access it, access your account on the CFA portal going forward. And again, before you begin this, after you create an account, but before you begin your application, you can go through the application instructions and checklist that's available on the program page on our website. Next slide. So once you are logged in, you go to creating a new application. The project name field is for your reference. You can follow our naming convention, but it's really what you want to refer to. Next slide. There are a couple of steps to go through to make sure you get to the right place to begin the application, because this is a shared platform across multiple programs. So select the appropriate program under economic development programs. It's the Connect All Municipal Infrastructure Program. And again, any questions about this process, and these are good steps to go through before you get close to the deadline, just to make sure you found the right place and get any help you need in the meantime. Next step. Next slide. There are threshold questions that meet the basic requirements just to get there. Also, just to as a reminder, as it says on the slide, please do not add any other programs to avoid program conflict. Approach this one as its own application process. Next slide. So that's under the Programs tab. After meeting the threshold requirements and proceeding to the next page, the not-for-profit information page is not applicable to this program, so please just proceed to the next page. Next slide. And then you will see that the Documents tab has a list of 8 required and 1 optional document requests. So those are all the questions that require an attachment or an upload, or that call for an attachment or an upload. Those can all be found under Documents, and that's where you upload any of those attachments that you'll find in the questions, either the questions as in the PDF or you see them under the Questionnaire tab. So under the Questionnaire tab is where you find the questions and just, again, if you can combine them to a single zip file, that would be great. But also, even though it says those file types are acceptable, some other ones may be acceptable. Again, you can test this out or let us know if you have any questions. And don't, follow that advice to upload them one at a time. Next slide. Again, the specific questions are all going to be found under the Questionnaire tab. So that's really going to be the primary focus of where you'll be answering most questions, going to the Documents tab for the upload of the required attachments. And mostly Documents Questionnaire is how you're going to go through most of the application. And then the next slide. And then the Funding tab is where you'll provide the total project cost and the amount of requested grant funds as you see on the page here. Next slide. So again, please review the application responses prior to your submission. Once you've submitted it, it cannot be modified or amended. That's the version that we will review and score. But as you're proceeding with this, you can return to it and modify it. So you can begin working in this area as you develop answers to the questions in the application. Next slide. So I'll just go through the next steps. Again, I know we've gotten some questions, and we won't really be answering those here, but appreciate sharing those. Generally speaking, again, we're seeing great interest in this program. We really encourage you to ask us those questions. Think about how it can apply or can work for you. We take this as strong as a confirmation that there is great interest across the state in this program and the approach of public infrastructure. And we've done our best to learn from the pilots, learn from the past work in New York, learn from all of your input, and a program that is going to be successful working with many of you all. And again, if you have any questions about how you can participate, please send that to us through the mip@esd.ny.gov email address, which you should put up here. And can you go to the next slide? So just to summarize, the next steps to take are go through the request for applications, see if that answers any of your questions, or if you've got a question about a specific section of the RFA, it'd be great to refer to that in the question you submit. Take the step sooner rather than later if you haven't already done so. of opening up the consolidated funding application portal and creating an account to access the online submission form. When you're beginning the process or as you're getting ready, go through the application instructions and checklists. So that's a sort of handy overview. Make sure your application is complete. You've got everything you need. And at any step in the process, please email us at the email address that you see there, or find on our website, or see in the chat. Put that subject heading in, and we will take that question, review it, and be posting answers on our website as we go through this process. And check often. We'll note when there's been an update on the website, when there's been an update, and the first set of questions, we expect to send it out along with this slide deck and the video to everybody that's registered for this. And we had, again, a very, very healthy turnout. Appreciate everybody's participation and time today. Next slide is really just the thank you with that information. We can go to that. And yeah, so we have a quick poll. You can quickly just let us know. This is not binding, but it gives us a good sense of where you're coming from. And just click these two boxes and help us give a sense of what's ahead for us coming towards that March 8th deadline. Again, we strongly encourage eligible public applicants who have projects ready to apply to do so by March 8th. And if you expect to address unserved and underserved locations, that's the best opportunity to avoid conflict with any other programs. Although, again, we will continue to update you as we progress towards phase 2 and phase 3 and expend all of these funds that have been entrusted to us by our partners at the Treasury Department Capital Projects Fund. So again, want to thank the governor, state legislature, our congressional delegation, Treasury Department, as well as the team at Connect All and our consultant support who have been moving us through this process and helping us prepare the presentation today. And again, thank you to everybody who participated, who came here today. And we will keep the forum open for a bit in case you have any other questions and to make sure you have a chance to respond to that poll. Thank you again. Also, just want to thank everybody who has shared their perspectives and experiences and the importance of this program from the point that the governor announced it to the legislature's authorization to all the way through the process of designing it and securing the funding from our federal partners. Thank you, everybody, to your your dedication to the Connect All mission and to this program. Thank you very much. And again, we'll keep the forum open for a bit in case anybody has any other questions they want to add into the chat.